The ColourPop and Twilight collab has gotten me thinking a lot about the role of nostalgia in makeup launches, because when I think of that palette, as you know, it's sold out in minutes. But if ColourPop were to have launched the exact same palette, I'm talking in an identical palette with just a different cover, it didn't say Twilight, it has no connection to Twilight. Maybe they called it like the Mystical Garden palette, because it has that like dark, moody garden vibe. We would not be hearing about it the way we are hearing about the Twilight palette right now. ColourPop can't even keep that thing in stock. And the Twilight collection is just one example, but in recent years alone, we have seen Powerpuff Girls collabs, Winx Club, Sailor Moon, Lizzie McGuire. It's like these launches have evolved from being something functional to being a type of merch. And with all of these collections, I can't help but ask myself, is nostalgia bait exploiting our memories? AKA, would we actually be interested in these products without the collaboration? And I want to break that down today in my Makeup Musings series. As always, I will link all of the products down below, but I'm starting off with Fenty Eaze Drop in the shade 3. Now, I am specifically interested in the idea of nostalgia and nostalgia bait in the world of cosmetics, but it definitely exists outside of beauty. And the area that it is probably the most present right now is in film and television. And today, I was actually getting coffee with my friend, and we were talking about the new Mean Girls movie, and she was like, why aren't there any new movies these days? Like, everything is a remake, both in movies and in television. We just got Wonka, which is a remake of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which is a remake of Willy Wonka. Did I say that backwards, or was that right? But even the new Mean Girls movie, even in television, like everything is either a spin-off, a reboot, a remake. Like in recent years, we've had And Just Like That, which is like the continuation of Sex and the City. They've remade Gossip Girl. They just announced that they're redoing Wizards of Waverly Place. We've also seen them redo did they do Zoe 101 or were they going to do Zoe 101? That and iCarly, they're remaking everything. But even outside of the beauty industry, outside of movies, television, we're seeing this everywhere. Another example, we could even use automotive. We recently watched Ford bring back the Bronco. Everything seems to be a remake of something that was very prominent years ago. And naturally, we have heavily seen this spill over into cosmetics. And it got me thinking a lot about collaborations over the years and what they used to look like and the evolution into what collabs look like today. But when I think of makeup collaborations a decade ago, they were mostly with individuals, whether that was an influencer, a celebrity. I remember when we first started getting a lot of collabs with Nikki Tutorials, Jaclyn Hill. And that's not to say that collaborations in beauty did not happen earlier than 10 years ago. Obviously they did, but there was a really undeniable uptick in the quantity in recent years. And it started with collabs with individuals. Those kind of ran their course. And then we started seeing collabs mostly with movies. The interesting distinction is when they started getting more popular, we were typically seeing these movie collabs in real time while these movies were coming out, kind of as an extension of the marketing for the movie. A brand I really think of with this is Pure Cosmetics. They did the Trolls one when that movie came out. They did one with My Little Pony. A lot of these collabs were really drawing up attention and buzz for the upcoming film, until we eventually started seeing collabs with more nostalgic movies and TV shows. We've seen it a lot with ColourPop, but also Glamlight, Spectrum Cosmetics, MAC was definitely doing this before anyone else. They have done a ton of collabs with people, with movies, with everything. They did a collab with The Sims. And even these days, we've seen collabs with the absolute weirdest of things. Benefit did a collab with Crocs years ago. e.l.f. has done collabs with Chipotle, American Eagle, very weird combos. But it appears the ones that get the most buzz, that sell out the fastest, are usually the nostalgia-based collaborations. Okay, we're taking a little bit of Natasha Denona concealer now, but even outside of these IP collabs, we've seen the rise in nostalgia themes, whether that is in the packaging, in the marketing campaigns, in the overall identity of the brands. One of my favorite examples is the brand Vacation. This is a brand at Ulta. It's a somewhat newer brand It's a skincare brand, but mostly focused on like sunscreen. They also do some fragrance, some candles, a little bit of everything, but they've gained a lot of popularity for their like retro nostalgic vibe. Okay. First of all, I'm gonna warn you right now, I'm gonna say nostalgia at least 100 more times in this video. It cannot be helped. And with the brand Vacation, they have gotten a lot of buzz, and the conversation that I hear is rarely about the actual products, though don't get me wrong, they have great products. I had one of their candles, I've burned through it, but it was phenomenal. And they come out with some unique things, yes, but what I mostly hear people commenting on is the look, is the vibe, is the imagery that they're using. Another brand that for me has this nostalgic feel, whether it's intentional or not, I'm not sure, is the brand In Beauty Project. When I look at their packaging, it feels so Y2K, reminds me of my childhood. It's very colorful, very punchy, lots of like neon tones, and that nostalgic vibe plays a lot into the overall appeal of that brand. Or even like Too Faced, for example, they have the Kissing Jelly Non-Stick Lip Oil Gloss, which is a very long name, but that, you cannot tell me that's not just like a remake of a lip gloss I would have used in the 5th grade. And I think it leaves consumers really excited, like, oh, something about this just feels so familiar. Even a very recent example, which feels so strange to be describing as nostalgic when it was not actually that long ago, but Glossier did a collaboration with Starface, which is the pimple patch brand. And do you remember the stickers that you used to get with a Glossier order? Well, that is what these pimple patches look like. They recreated a lot of the stickers from years ago when they used to give those out with orders, and now it is a pimple patch, and it's the collab with Starface. And that's another one where I think people were just so excited about the memory of those Glossier stickers and the fact that you don't get those with your order anymore, that they now want to buy these pimple patches and wear the stickers kind of as that fun throwback. Another one, I really think of squeeze tube lip balms. Now, don't get me wrong, these days, squeeze tube lip balm, that's kind of like the expectation. Like everyone loves a lip balm in a squeeze tube. Those have gained so much popularity in recent years, but there was a time that very few brands were packaging their lip balms in that type of component. And for a while there, that's the type of packaging that I would have associated with something from the early 2000s. Like there was a time when that was like the really cool lip gloss to have when I was a kid. And I distinctly remember when ColourPop started selling glosses in that style of packaging, everybody was so excited. They're like, oh, this is this early 2000s lip gloss. I like having it because it reminds me of my childhood. And granted, I'm speaking a lot about a childhood in the early 2000s because that is when I had my childhood and I'm kind of like speaking on my own behalf. But we have watched that style of exterior packaging explode in recent years. And now everybody seems to be loving the like revival of the squeeze tube lip balm. Okay, for powder, I'm going to take the Huda Beauty Peach Pie Powder. I have been loving this. And now the question it kind of has me asking is why? Why is everything, like what's up with all the nostalgia bait these days, you know? And I think on one level, it's kind of just a guaranteed success, especially when we think about these movies. Okay, maybe not a guaranteed success. If the movie's bad, the movie's bad. But there's an instant level of interest from the original fan base, you know, when we're talking about revivals and remakes, reboots of movies and shows. And I'm really thinking that with the new Wizards of Waverly Place show that they just announced, they're gonna like redo it. If they were to just present this as a brand new television show, like, hey, we have this show about wizards, I don't think people would be that excited about it. But because they're like, hey, we're redoing Wizards of Waverly Place, all the original fans, you know, you've got all these built-in fans from the original show that of course want to check out what the new show is going to be like. Even going back to the example of Ford bringing back the Bronco, you know, they could have just introduced a brand new SUV to the lineup and named it something completely different. You know, they could have named it, okay, I was trying to think of names. I literally Googled names of horses, but they could have been like, okay, this is the Clydesdale. Sure, people would have talked about it. Like, okay, what's the newest launch from Ford? But because it's, oh, we're bringing back the Bronco, everybody wants to see how's the new Bronco, what's up with the new Bronco. But with makeup, in a lot of ways, it kind of feels like we have done just about everything. And that's not to say that there aren't new innovative things brands could come up with, but that's a lot harder to do than just making a new collection with an existing movie, you know? There is essentially a never-ending list of collaborations that these brands could do, and we have definitely seen that. Again, even outside of like IP collabs, we have seen the weirdest collabs in recent years, like cheese collabs, coffee shop collabs with e.l.f. did Dunkin' Donuts, like some weird things. There are unlimited things for these brands to collaborate with. So I understand it from their perspective, but even for the consumer, I think there's something kind of comforting about the nostalgia in these collections. Okay, I'm priming my eyes right now with a little bit of my Milani primer. And then I'm gonna go in with the Sigma Ambiance palette and start with the shade Basque. I was reading an article from Refinery 29 on this topic. The article is from 2022, but the author writes, in the past 2 years or so, we've been largely missing a sense of emotional safety and connection, as well as an outlet for self-expressive creativity and joy. Nostalgic beauty fulfills at least one of those, and in some cases, depending on your most memorable makeup products, the other as well. And I definitely think this is a big element in the appeal from consumers. You know, these collabs remind us of a simpler time. And even beyond that, I think in a lot of cases, these collaborations can almost be an excuse to buy or try something that maybe you would not otherwise. And specifically with the Twilight collab, those are tones that personally I don't wear very often and are maybe less commonly worn among most makeup users. But there's a really fun element of play involved with purchasing that palette and maybe trying tones that you wouldn't typically be drawn to. Also, it feels way too late in this video to make the confession that I've actually never seen any of the Twilight movies, which is very strange, I know. I was definitely in the age group that grew up with Twilight, but somehow I have never seen them. And I've heard people say it's almost like too late to watch them. I've heard people say like if you didn't watch them when they were coming out, you wouldn't like them today. Let me know. Should I try to watch Twilight now, or do you feel like it would be lost on me, you know? Okay, but for the shimmer, let's take the shade Midas. But I'm gonna take this on a brush, honestly, kind of lightly. I don't want it to be like a foiled look as much as I just want to add a little bit of sheen to the eye. Okay, very simple, but let's do mascara now. This is the e.l.f. Lash Extender in brown that I've been so obsessed with lately. Personally, when it comes to these very nostalgia-focused collabs, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling a bit of fatigue. Again, maybe it's because I haven't seen Twilight, so it doesn't have the same pull for me. But I'm just like, okay, enough is enough. I don't feel as excited about them as I did years ago. It just feels like we've traded in a lot of the creativity and innovation that used to excite me about new launches for collab. And I don't think there's anything inherently wrong about these very like nostalgia bait collabs, but I do think they can lead to consumers purchasing products that they might not otherwise. And I know I have definitely fallen victim to this. And what I try to do to like prevent myself from buying these things that I might not want otherwise is I try to imagine what the product would be without the collab attached to it. You know, with the example of the Lizzie McGuire palette, I was such a big Lizzie McGuire fan. And when it launched, I was like, oh my gosh, I should buy that palette. I used to be obsessed with Lizzie McGuire. But looking at the palette, it was a bunch of colors that I would not wear. And again, maybe in some ways that might have like pushed me out of my comfort zone. But I knew at the end of the day, it wouldn't get much use. It would kind of exist as like a collector's piece for me. So considering the palette from the perspective of, hey, pretend it has nothing to do with Lizzie McGuire and it's actually just a pink, green, and purple palette. Would you still want it? The answer was no. So I skipped the palette. Also, can we just talk about the Ambiance palette? Every time I use this, something about just those warm tones, I feel like they make your eye color pop so much, even while still being a pretty subtle eye look. For lips, I want to use the new Summer Fridays lip oil, but first I want to use this, oh, I need to sharpen this, but okay. This lip liner from bareMinerals. I'm normally such a drugstore lip liner girl, but this shade, Striking Spice, is one of my favorite lip liner shades, and I think it ties in really well with the warmth from the eyeshadow. But now I'm going to take the Summer Fridays lip oil in the shade Blush Dreams and apply that over top. So to answer the question, is nostalgia bait exploiting our memories? A little bit. It can definitely lead to people buying products that they might not otherwise without the collaboration there. Is that the worst possible offense? No. But I do think admitting the role that nostalgia plays in our interest in new launches allows us to be better and more informed consumers. So I'm very curious to hear your thoughts down below. I hope you enjoyed today's makeup musings, and I will go ahead and see you in my next one. Bye.